In the shadows of night, a troop of soldiers chases after a lone girl. As the girl heads deeper into a forest, they hesitate, not wanting to bother the demon lord living inside. Meanwhile, as the girl is feeling guilty about leaving her family behind, she trips and collapses in the forest. In the morning, we see another part of the forest where a young man, actually the demon lord Alan, is reading a morning newspaper. While reading the headline about a wanted criminal, he detects someone nearby. When he teleports to their location, he finds a collapsed girl surrounded by some animals. The animals leave as he approaches, and Alan picks up the weak-looking girl in his arms. Noticing her ragged clothes, he detects some soldiers in the surroundings. The soldiers come out and demand that he hand the girl over. However, Alan knows they plan on doing nothing good to the girl. A fight begins, and the soldiers get shocked when Alan easily defeats them. They realize too late that he's the feared demon lord, but Alan hypnotizes them all and forces them to return to their country. After getting rid of the soldiers, Alan brings the girl to his house. He wonders how this sweet young girl could be the wanted criminal of the Nere's kingdom. The girl wakes up after some time and accepts a drink from the unfamiliar man. He asks her why she collapsed in the forest, and the girl explains that she was trying to get to his mansion when she fell down. She feels relieved upon learning she is in the same mansion. However, when Alan points out that she's Charlotte Evans, fiancée of the Nere's kingdom's crown prince and a wanted criminal, she denies it. The demon lord nods, saying he can tell she's not lying. He is surprised when she starts crying since Alan is the first person to believe her. Charlotte then explains that she was just an innocent girl and that one day, the prince suddenly accused her of evil acts and arrested her. While Alan thinks that she was probably dumped because the prince found another woman, Charlotte thanks him for his help but offers to leave since she doesn't want to burden him. However, he quickly refuses and offers to hire her as a maid for his house, with a room to stay and 3 meals and money as payment. The girl seems surprised, and Alan himself wonders why he wants to help a wanted criminal. However, he explains that he was also betrayed by his close friends in the past, which brings Charlotte to tears. Seeing how easily she believed him and felt bad for him, Alan's heart softens and he becomes more determined to help Charlotte. However, the girl still doesn't want to accept his favor, so Alan decides to convince her by putting a death curse on himself. The poor girl gets the fright of her life, wondering if Alan really is a kind person or some lunatic. Of course, with her kind nature, she is forced to agree to save Alan's life. After Charlotte starts living with Alan, he notices how much she helps with cleaning. He realizes that despite her title of nobility, her family was only using her as a servant. Charlotte notices him watching and asks what she should do after cleaning. Learning that she's free to do whatever she wants after work surprises her, and a happy Charlotte heads to the library. There, she notices Alan working but feels disappointed when he tells her not to bother him. A few hours later, Alan sees Charlotte on the floor near him and wonders what she's doing. She calmly responds that she was just counting the number of wood chips on the floor, which blows even Alan's mind. He learns that Charlotte was always forced to work in her house, so she never had the free time to enjoy a hobby. Hearing that Charlotte's best memory is receiving a half-rotten fruit, Alan's face twists in anger, and he decides to give Charlotte a crash course on all the naughty and fun things in the world. He then lays out a bunch of stuff he bought for Charlotte, and she wonders what it is. Then, Alan suddenly cups her face and tells the blushing girl that he'll be using all the items to teach her naughty things. To see how she'd like that, Alan asks Charlotte if she has ever spoken up against her family's bull. Unsurprisingly, the girl thought they were nice enough to let her stay there, and never raised her voice at them. To break this submissive nature, Alan decides to make her enjoy naughty things she never would have even dreamed of. Charlotte then gets surprised when the naughty thing is revealed to be a dinner of chocolates, cakes, and other sweets. Somehow, Alan has a pure heart and doesn't mean to do anything dirty. Charlotte still hesitates to eat such an unhealthy dinner, but Alan tells her it's okay to enjoy herself occasionally. Charlotte still refuses to eat a cake, feeling bad that he bought all the stuff. However, she blushes when Alan reveals he bought the cake to make her happy. This finally convinces Charlotte to eat the cake. When she starts crying after a bite, Alan panics, wondering if it tastes that bad. However, he learns that Charlotte is crying out of joy that he's being so nice to her, and she asks him if someone as useless as she deserves to be happy. Hearing her innocent yet vulnerable voice, Alan's eyes soften even more, and he wipes her tears before promising to make her the happiest girl in the world. Charlotte wonders why the demon lord is being so nice to her, and Alan himself doesn't know either. Charlotte is about to refuse again, but Alan reminds her that she will be forced to obey her employer's orders, which she accepts. Then, she invites Alan to finish all the cake with her, and the demon lord thinks he's supposed to help her eat. A blushing Charlotte gets fed by Alan, who is prepared to give her a great life. Meanwhile, outside the mansion, a pair of creepy eyes watches the two, unhappy with the demon lord. Later at night, Alan thinks that the cakes simply aren't enough naughtiness for Charlotte and decides to surprise her with even more treats. After staying up all night, he makes a book full of all the naughty things he'll teach Charlotte. However, when she comes in and notices the bags under his eyes, Alan quickly tosses away the book, not having the courage to actually tell her. Charlotte feels worried that he stayed up all night working, and tells him to go to sleep. Then, as she prepares to do more cleaning, Alan wonders why she's working so much. After observing her, he thinks she's healthy enough to keep working, but wonders why she's doing extra. Charlotte just feels like repaying his debt and reveals that she used to clean every day in her house. Alan gets upset at this, and she quietly leaves him alone. The demon lord starts thinking about destroying Charlotte's old family, before realizing that she probably wouldn't be too happy with that. He knows that her self-esteem is too low to even admit that her old family bullied her. Suddenly, Alan's thoughts get interrupted by Maicha, a cat girl working as a deliveryman. She recognizes Charlotte as a wanted criminal, and Alan starts explaining why he hired her as a maid. However, the cat girl remains professional, saying it's none of her business. Then, after delivering her package, she gets a shipment from Alan to deliver. Charlotte is surprised upon learning that Alan makes money by selling magic potions. Maicha wonders why he doesn't just settle in the city, but the demon lord has a rather relatable yet dumb reason for it: his social anxiety. Because of how isolated he is, he earned his nickname, and even helping lost children at night made him look terrifying. Charlotte learns about this new side of the demon lord, who is just an introverted wizard. Then, Alan recalls that Maicha's company also delivers groceries, and gets a catalog from her. He tells Charlotte to order anything she needs from it, threatening that if she refuses, he'll just buy literally everything listed on the thing. Seeing him threaten Charlotte so shamelessly, Maicha tells her to knock some sense into him. However, the sweet girl would never dare harm someone so kind to her. Later, Charlotte's package arrives, and Alan gets a massive box at his place. When Charlotte finds out it's a punching bag for her, Alan tells her it's how she'll do her next naughty activity. Miss Shaw gets the wrong idea and wonders what kind of devious acts the two are committing. But a flustered Alan tells her it's nothing inappropriate. He then puts a picture of her former fiancé on the punching bag and tells her to release all her anger on it. However, Charlotte claims she's not angry and doesn't want to punch him. Despite Alan's efforts, the girl feels like her fiancé never treated her wrong, and he gets frustrated by her attitude. His plan of getting Charlotte angry at the man and then using that excuse to destroy the Nera's kingdom goes in vain. However, Alan does want Charlotte to stop holding her emotions inside, so he tries something else, making himself her target. Naturally, Charlotte refuses, so Alan uses a spell to force her body to attack. After getting knocked into the void, he praises a crying Charlotte's punching ability and explains that he made her attack. Then, Alan smiles at her and tells her that no matter how much she gets angry at him or hits him, he'll never abandon her or get mad. Hearing how sincerely Alan wants her to feel free, Charlotte blushes, before getting mad that he made her punch him to prove his point. Then, to ease her worries, he heals his injury with a spell. However, Charlotte is still upset that he felt pain, and tells him to never do this again. Alan is surprised by her heartbroken expression, and immediately promises her he'll never hurt himself again. Watching the two of them, Maicha can't help but feel like a third wheel. Then, Charlotte promises Alan she'll do her best to start expressing her feelings out loud. Later, before leaving, Maicha tells Alan to stay in touch if he ever needs items like a double bed, baby bottles, and more. Both Charlotte and Alan remain confused as to why the cat girl thinks they'll need such things. A few days later, in the morning, Alan asks Charlotte what she'd like to drink for breakfast. When she says she'll just have what he's having, he pulls out a censored abomination, which forces her to choose a normal drink. The girl complains about being forced to choose normal drinks, but Alan tells her he wants her to make all the choices herself. Charlotte smiles at this and reveals that this is the second choice she made by herself after running away from her home. This comes as a surprise, but their moment is interrupted by a strange girl in flashy clothing. It turns out to be Alan's stepsister, Iruka Crawford, who has been looking for her big brother after he ran away from home. Seeing Charlotte, Iruka is surprised that her weird brother actually got a girlfriend, but both of them deny a relationship. Alan thinks that Charlotte would never want some weirdo magician who lives alone, but the girl immediately denies having that opinion of him. Then, he explains Charlotte's whole story to Iruka, telling her that his sister is trustworthy. After learning what happened, Iruka gets mad that Alan has been teaching Charlotte so much boring stuff, and claims she can give her so much pleasure her legs will get weak. However, Alan doesn't back down, and the poor maid gets dragged into a competition to make her have the most fun. Later, Alan turns Charlotte's blonde hair black to help her visit the town in disguise. Iruka falls in love with the new look, but Alan tells her he'll change the hair back to blonde later because he likes it better. This makes both girls flush beet red, while Alan remains unaware of the riz he just displayed. Then, to start the naughty fun, Iruka drags Charlotte away to buy her new clothes. At the clothes store, Alan remembers that Iruka had always been challenging him in her childhood, feeling like it was her way of getting close to her brother. His thoughts are interrupted when she comes out with Charlotte dressed in a cute miniskirt. However, Alan has to play it cool and claims the skirt might be too short for her. Despite that, he sneaks a peek at the beautiful Charlotte, and his gaze travels to her legs. To stop his intrusive thoughts, Alan immediately punches himself, shocking the poor girl. Then, after Charlotte goes to change into another set of clothes, Iruka discusses investigating her old family. Alan agrees, wanting to make them face his wrath, and his sister smirks at how protective he is of Charlotte. Then, she heads in to help Charlotte wear a tricky dress. Iruka notices something strange on her body before bringing the dressed Charlotte outside. Alan still thinks the dress is revealing, but when Iruka makes Charlotte turn around, he notices several scars on her exposed back. He feels even worse for the poor girl, learning that her family must have whipped her, leaving Charlotte unaware of her scars. He uses magic to heal her scars, before telling Iruka he will definitely exterminate the abusive kingdom. Charlotte wonders who he wants to exterminate, but Alan pretends he just needs to get rid of a bug infestation. Then, Iruka pushes him to choose a dress for Charlotte himself. The embarrassed Alan doesn't know what to choose and randomly picks out a dress. Unfortunately, it turns out to be a bikini, which makes both girls misunderstand his intentions. Afterward, Alan takes out Charlotte to spoil her even more. At a gift shop, Iruka is forced to choose items for her since her brother has horrible taste. Later, Charlotte feels bad that he's spending so much on her, but Alan doesn't mind and thinks that the items look good on her anyway. This makes Charlotte look away in embarrassment, but the dense Alan thinks something is wrong, much to his sister's amusement. Sometime later, Iruka sees a magical wheelchair and immediately rushes to observe it. Alan explains that she loves technology before taking Charlotte away. He buys a cute hairpin for her and puts it on her. When Charlotte shyly thanks Alan, his heart feels strange. But before he can realize his feelings, a guy bumps into Charlotte on purpose. Alan thinks about grinding him into a pulp, before remembering Charlotte doesn't like violence. He tries to apologize to the guys, but they only seem to harass her further. This sets Alan off, and he takes both of them down, threatening to end them if they touch his darling Charlotte again. The onlookers cheer for Alan, who apologizes to Charlotte for being violent. However, she thanks him for protecting her, and he feels relieved. Alan then tells her he really enjoys spending time with her, while Iruka realizes in the crowd that her brother has truly left her behind. As the intimidating golem looms over the two, Alan reassures Charlotte before confidently walking up to it. He asks if the golem is named Megath, which it affirms. However, the golem doesn't seem to recognize Alan, who reminds him that he's Alan Crawford. This name shocks the golem and brings it down to its knees in front of its own terrified lackeys. Seeing this, Iruka explains to the confused Charlotte that her father is actually the headmaster of the country's largest magic academy, and that Alan was a genius troublemaker who graduated from it at the age of 12 and became a teacher himself. While Charlotte gawks at this information, Megath pleads for mercy. However, Alan reminds it that its underlings tried to harm Charlotte, who is his something. He realizes he hasn't figured out his relationship with Charlotte, before declaring that she's a woman important to him. A few days later, Mayacha and Iruka make their way to Alan's mansion. They see him moping outside and learn that something happened with Charlotte. After getting forced to accept wages for her work, Charlotte requested Alan to let her go shopping alone with her money. This left him worried sick for her, and the girls wondered why he didn't just say no. Sadly, the poor demon lord couldn't say no to the sweet Charlotte and was now terrified of anything that could happen to her. To fix this problem, Iruka suddenly suggests an easy solution. We then shift to Charlotte in the town, with the three of them sneaking around to follow her. The girls ask Alan what she needs to buy, and he reveals that she kept it a secret from him. Alan feels happy that Charlotte is keeping her secrets and becoming her own person, which weirds both girls out. Sadly, poor Charlotte has trouble reading the map Alan gave her, and she starts wandering off into a dangerous area. The girls get worried and think about telling her, but Alan doesn't want to interrupt Charlotte's adventure. Then, he suddenly disappears, leaving the two girls confused. Later, as Charlotte finally reaches the dangerous area, the thugs pop out, while Iruka and Mayacha wonder where the hero Alan is. To their surprise, the thugs immediately start worshipping Charlotte. The girls then finally see Alan, who explains that he simply beat everyone up and warned them to be kind to Charlotte. However, Charlotte treats the kneeling thugs kindly, and her sweet behavior wins them all over anyway. Then, the thugs cautiously ask about her relationship with Alan, and Charlotte wonders if they know him. As they try explaining, Alan suddenly threatens them from a distance with a magic spell, and they just remind her of their original question. After thinking about it for a bit, Charlotte tells them that Alan is her master, which makes his heart throb. The thugs believe that the terrifying demon lord is threatening her, but Charlotte explains that he is a gentleman who teaches her all sorts of naughty things. Alan explains to the girls that he just played video games with her all night after Charlotte leaves. Then, he moves to take out every single gang in the area to ensure her safety. Later, Alan waits with Aruka for Mayacha to bring Charlotte back. She returns in high spirits, but a shopkeeper suddenly thanks Alan for cleaning up the place. He seems surprised but learns that all the gangs he sobered up for Charlotte's sake were bothering the townsfolk. Then, he asks Charlotte about her shopping and finds out that she bought gifts for Mayacha and Aruka. As the girls thank Charlotte, Alan feels his heart break since he didn't get anything. Charlotte guiltily explains that she just didn't know what he liked, and apologizes for not knowing his tastes. However, Alan reassures her before she offers to fix his clothes and listen to all of what he likes. Watching her get so close to him, Alan feels a strange feeling growing in his heart, hopeful that living with Charlotte will be even more fun from now on. A few days later, we see Alan and Charlotte heading out for a trip in a carriage. Unknown to them, shady figures tail their path. To explain what had happened, we rewind to the previous day. We see Charlotte reading a book about Alan's old academy, excited about all the stuff available there. However, when Alan suddenly asks her if she'd like to visit a place like it, she hesitates, knowing he'll just take her wherever she wants. Alan notices her hesitation but offers to take her anywhere since he only wants her to have fun. As he presses Charlotte to decide on a place, Mayacha suddenly barges into their room with 2 tickets to a resort. Apparently, the townsfolk sent them as a thank you for Alan's help with the thugs. Thus, he finds himself with Charlotte in a carriage and notices how much she is enjoying the view. Charlotte then asks him why he didn't bring his sister along, and Alan explains that she's busy. Inside, he wishes that Aruka does a good job of investigating Charlotte's rotten family. Alan remains unaware that Aruka is right behind his carriage with Mayacha, seemingly up to no good. The naughty girl only wanted to push her brother into this trip so he could realize his feelings for Charlotte, while Mayacha tagged along to see the drama. Inside the carriage, Alan thinks about the hotel they're headed to and asks Charlotte if it's where she wants to go. However, he catches her lying and insists she tell him where she really wants to visit. Charlotte then gets embarrassed, saying it's a childish place, but Alan tells her that enjoying childish fun is not a bad thing for adults. He holds her close in an intimate moment and promises she can share anything she wants with him. When they finally reach the hotel, Alan asks the receptionist to take them to the hot springs, which Charlotte seems excited about. She nods and thanks them for choosing their hotel for their honeymoon. At this news, both Charlotte and Alan flash red, learning that they actually had a couple's ticket. Alan realizes it was all part of Erica's scheme, but decides to keep the plan since it's the best one available. Later in the spring, the receptionist hands Alan a drink with 2 straws, meant for the couple to drink together. However, Alan quickly drinks it all himself to save Charlotte from embarrassment. Before they head into the spring, though, she reminds Alan they'll have to change into swimsuits. He nods and heads in, waiting for his lover to show up. Alan wonders how his body will react to Charlotte in a swimsuit. But when she finally comes in wearing a cute pair, he immediately ascends to heaven. Charlotte thinks that he's not responding because it looks bad, but he immediately reassures her that it looks great. Then, he takes her hand and experiences all the naughty fun in the hot spring, including spas, water slides, and more. Before leaving, the 2 of them relax in the hot water, and Alan orders an ice cream to enjoy in the strange setting. Using a magic spell to help it stay frozen, he ensures Charlotte has a good time, while nearby people notice and request that he freeze their ice cream as well. Later at dinner, the receptionist thanked Alan for increasing their ice cream sales, before asking if he'd like to go anywhere special the next day. Alan asks for a recommendation and learns that a nearby spot has magical beasts called Fenrir's. Unfortunately, because it's mating season, the beasts don't show up at this time of the year, so the receptionist recommends that they visit a zoo for a similar experience. Charlotte immediately blushes at this idea, and Alan decides that's where they'll go. Afterward, they head to their room to sleep but realize they'll have to share a bed as a couple. In the next room, Mayacha and Aruka snoop around, trying to hear what's happening inside. Alan gets into the bed, noticing that it has a dream gem that helps people have good dreams. Unfortunately, he cannot fall asleep with Charlotte next to him. After helping her sleep with a spell, he starts to fantasize about her cute face and immediately uses a spell to force everyone in the area, including himself, to doze off. The next morning, Charlotte wakes up happy, saying she got to meet her mother in her dreams. Alan smiles, vowing in his heart to always protect her. Meanwhile, outside their hotel, a menacing beast wonders if Alan is capable of protecting the sweet lady Charlotte. Back to Alan, he learns that Charlotte really wants to go to the petting zoo and makes friends with all the fluffy animals there. Before they head over, he asks if she wants to get anything, which Charlotte refuses to say. However, at the threat of another self-curse, she reveals that she wants to wear cat ears with him. Alan's heart skips a beat, and Charlotte backs down from her offer. However, he immediately accepts the cute girl's proposal, unaware that a group of beasts is stalking the two of them. Alan then heads over to the petting zoo with Charlotte, where he sees warning signs about hell capybaras, a ferocious beast species. The zookeeper reassures him that the beasts are currently in hiding, and Alan notices Charlotte crying from happiness. He heads into the petting zoo with her and uses magic to talk to a few cute beasts. Alan bribes them into making friends with Charlotte, but learns it is unnecessary as he sees all of the animals in love with the bubbly girl. After she comes out, Alan tells Charlotte that she might have a natural talent for becoming a powerful beast tamer. Before he can think about her strange charm, though, the zookeeper rushes in with news of an emergency. She takes them to a place where an injured Fenrir is being guarded. The staff there wonders if the legendary Alan Crawford can calm the cub down, and he promises to do his best. Suddenly, news of another emergency hits them, and they learn that Fenrir's mother is headed their way. Alan thinks about it and decides to fight the mother himself. He tells the staff to evacuate everyone at the zoo and tells Charlotte to leave as well. However, she feels hopeful that she might be able to talk to the cub with her talent. The staff is forced to trust Charlotte, and Alan leaves the cub in her hands. He heads back to the resort to where his sister and Mayacha are and tells them he needs their help before heading back to where the beasts are. There, he meets Fenrir's massive mother, who doesn't want to listen to him anytime soon. Alan decides to defeat her, but suddenly, a hell capybara warns him that he'll hurt the cub by hurting its mother. It introduces itself as Ghostsu, claiming that it'll free Charlotte from his oppressive hands. Alan realizes the beast is just jealous of him and is using the Fenrirs to defeat him. Before their fight gets even worse, though, Charlotte comes running to him with an army of beasts and a healthy Fenrir cub by her side. Alan learns that she easily learned to speak with all the beasts, surprised that she could do something so difficult in just a day. Then, the Fenrir cub explains to its mother that Alan isn't the bad guy, and Ghostsu feels cornered. It tries convincing Charlotte to run away with it, but the girl refuses, saying Alan has shown her a new world full of happiness. Alan feels touched by her defense, but Ghostsu remains stubborn, even willing to force Charlotte to leave. Thus, he defeats the best convincingly, and Ghostsu finally gives up on fighting him. The beast realizes Alan's feelings for Charlotte are pure, which confuses the demon lord. After the incident is resolved, Alan and Charlotte prepare to wrap up their trip at the resort. He thanks Charlotte for all her help, which she finds hard to accept. Before they can head back home, though, the two of them are greeted by the fairies and the cub Charlotte saved. Charlotte smiles at their sight but wonders what happened to the poachers that hurt the cub. Alan reassures her that he already dealt with him, and Mayacha and Aruka pop out with the captured poachers. The demon lord smiles, while Charlotte wonders what the two girls are doing at the same resort. Meanwhile, Alan ties up the poachers and uses a spell to make sure they stay alive while the enraged Fenrirs take all of their anger on them. After the poachers have their lovely meeting with the Fenders, Charlotte and Alan prepare to head home. Before they leave, though, the Fenrir cub Charlotte rescued asks to come with them. Alan doesn't mind bringing it along, but wonders if it'll be okay without its family. The receptionist explains that fairies are very fast creatures and that they can travel from country to country in just an hour. Alan relaxes at this information and warmly welcomes the cub to live at his house. Charlotte feels happy but surprised as always at his kindness, but the demon lord thinks another addition to the family is nice. Upon learning that he already thinks of her as a family member, Charlotte's face turns redder than a tomato, while all the girls watching sigh at how romantic the dense wizard is. After saying their goodbyes, Alan and Charlotte finally get on their carriage but notice an uninvited guest, Ghostsu, with them. Charlotte feels weirded out by the strange creature, who seems to have decided by itself that it's also going to be Alan's family. Thus, a few weeks pass like this, and Alan gets used to all these new family members living with him. Ghostsu notices that he's feeling a bit sad that Charlotte is spending more time with the Fenrir cub, Lou, but he has no choice but to let her explore her path. Alan heads out and sees Charlotte practicing with Lou, realizing she has more to her personality now that she's trying to become a beast tamer. He compliments Charlotte on her mastery, while Ghostsu mocks him for using that as an excuse to sound close to her. Alan then heads over to Charlotte, and Lou immediately starts growling at him. Ignoring the unhappy beast, he praises her on her progress, while Ghostsu notices that she has reached a high level of mastery that can allow her to help her beast talk. Charlotte is surprised and tries out this new spell, which indeed allows Lou to speak. The first thing the Fenrir cub does is curse out Lou, before rushing to help his mommy Charlotte. Poor Alan is left to wonder why the cub dislikes him so much. Afterward, he builds a lovely pool for Lou to relax in, as a gift to celebrate his new talking ability. Charlotte makes Lou thank Alan, which the cub is forced to do. However, before Lou can enjoy his pool, Ghostsu shamelessly walks in and starts lazing around, much to Alan's anger. The capybara feels discriminated against and uses a spell to turn into a human. To everyone's surprise, Ghost Sue turns out to be a gorgeous woman, and she doesn't seem amused that they had all assumed her gender. Later, Alan watches from outside while Charlotte plays with her pet beast in the pool. He enjoys watching her having grown so much, feeling a strange pain in his heart. Charlotte notices the strange expression on his face, but Alan reassures her that it's nothing serious. Then, after she gets out of the pool, she sits and has a chat with Alan. He wonders if she wants a lazy river in the garden, which makes the girl chuckle. Then, Alan reveals that someone else used to own the house, but they had mysteriously disappeared one day. This terrifies Charlotte, and Alan starts talking about strange tales about a weird elf who had one day gotten cursed by mushrooms growing on her body. Thus, he had been able to buy the mansion for a cheap price. Unfortunately, the scared Charlotte isn't too impressed, and Alan suddenly notices a bunch of mushrooms growing on Ghost Sue's skin. They wonder where the mushrooms are coming from, and notice an elf in the ground nearby, whom Charlotte thinks is a ghost of the previous owner. It turns out, she is in fact the previous owner of the mansion, who has been living in the ground all this time. Charlotte clings to Alan, terrified, while the demon lord seems surprised that the girl, named Dorothea, would go into hiding for 30 years. This news leaves the dark elf stunned since she didn't think she spent that long in the ground. Later, Alan wonders what he'll do about the mansion since he only got it after the previous owner was labeled missing. If she had been here all along, he might have been sued for stealing her property. Thus, he is determined to take the mansion from Dorothea no matter what. Before she gives him the mansion, though, Dorothea decides to explain her story. It turns out that she's actually a famous novel writer who produced lots of masterpieces. Unfortunately, she couldn't write well in a very popular genre, romance. Thus, after failing to meet her strict editor's deadline, Dorothea had gone into hiding. Alan wonders if he wants to help someone as lazy as her, but she threatens to sue him if he doesn't. Thus, Dorothea decides to make her request. Noticing how close both Alan and Charlotte are, she requests them to help her make a romantic film for her novel and act all lovey-dovey for her. Thus, the two of them are forced into acting out a bunch of old Shakespearean theater dramas. In one of the scenes, Charlotte has to act as Alan's lover jumping from a gallery into his arms. He safely catches her, but Dorothea immediately cuts to the scene, saying that he used magic to cushion her fall. Alan feels embarrassed about carrying her with his own hands, which enraged the director even more. She feels upset that they're acting like a bunch of shy children, and gives Alan a script that includes scripted flirting. However, he feels too shy and claims that Charlotte wouldn't even want to flirt with him. However, she unexpectedly reveals that she doesn't mind flirting with him, which makes Alan bash his head into the wall to calm down. A worried Charlotte rushes up to him, but he seems more self-conscious about his blush than his head injury. Watching the scene, Gaosetsu sighs, knowing the two can just flirt naturally. Alan sighs and realizes he needs to act anyway if he wants to own the mansion. However, his bravado quickly wears off when he learns that he has to act as a newlywed husband to Charlotte. The scene gets set, and Alan heads into his house to his waiting wife. Charlotte innocently greets him with the 3 classic Japanese wife specials. When she asks Alan if he would like to have dinner, a bath, or herself, he starts a nosebleed fountain before Dorothea is forced to cut. Then, he proceeds to have lunch with Charlotte, who seems to be happy to perform her role as his wife. Afterward, Dorothea decides to have a school scene, where she requires some bullies as well. Gaosetsu and Lou offer to act the part, and Alan is then forced to act as a punk whose girlfriend was kidnapped. The scene goes normally, and Lou and Gaosetsu act as the tough guys kidnapping the damsel in distress. This time, though, Alan gets a bit too into his role and destroys the two of them before approaching his girlfriend. He remembers Dorothea's advice to flirt and puts his hands on a wall behind Charlotte in a classic gesture. Keeping up with his acting, Gaosetsu asks about his feelings for Charlotte. Alan gulps and decides to confess since he's still acting. However, he ruins the mood and claims he's her guardian, which manages to anger Dorothea once more. After this scene, Alan feels like acting is a bit too much for him. However, Charlotte seems to be enjoying herself, so he agrees to continue the work. The next script is a rather familiar story, where Charlotte will be acting as a bullied princess in a noble household with an abusive stepmother. As the scene begins, Charlotte begins cleaning the floor, reminded of her previous life with her family. After her family leaves her at the house to attend a ball, she feels sad about her cruel fate. Thankfully, a magician appears and grants her the ability to visit the ball in secret. There, she meets her white knight in armor, Alan. The charming prince immediately falls in love with the beautiful yet simple girl and asks her out for a dance. Inwardly, Charlotte is impressed by Alan in beautiful clothes but continues her acting. It turns out, this is their first time dancing, and both of them get along well at the ball. However, even though the stepmother feels upset about Charlotte having made it to the ball, she remains helpless as the girl dances with the prince. Unexpectedly, Charlotte stops following the script and leans her head happily against a surprised Alan's chest. Dorothea signals a cut after the perfect scene and praises Charlotte for her great acting. Alan protests, saying he tried his best too, but doesn't receive the same treatment. Then, after taking a break, the group prepares to record the final scene. In the final scene, Alan, the Prince Charming, finds that his beautiful lover has gone missing. He goes to investigate and finally finds the girl's house. There, her stepmother tries to hide her daughter away from him, but filled with love, the prince manages to find his soulmate. The girl feels scared, not feeling worthy of being with such a great man. However, the selfless prince doesn't care about dumb values and prepares to confess his feelings. Although the entire scene is an act, both Alan and Charlotte blush brightly as the final scene approaches. However, before Alan can confess, a nearby wall suddenly blows up, ruining the mood. A scary yet fancy-looking man steps out, having detected someone. It turns out that he's Dorothea's old editor, who has been looking for her all this time. He quickly wraps her up, before paying Alan for any trouble she caused. Dorothea starts crying as the man drags her away, preparing to unleash his wrath on her. Meanwhile, Charlotte asks what Alan is about to confess, but he chickens out and tells her to forget it. Suddenly, Eruca comes into the house, saying Charlotte's little sister is in trouble. At this news, Charlotte recalls a memory with her younger sister, Natalia. After getting her daily dose of bullying from the housemaids, she was greeted by her sister. Natalia asked her elder sister to read a book to her, but Charlotte, who was too tired, refused to do it that day. Then, to get closer to her older sister, she requested that she start addressing her by her first name, and beamed with a bright smile on hearing it. Charlotte wakes up from this memory, realizing she's in a ship's cabin on the way somewhere. On the deck of the ship, Alan discusses Natalia with Eruca. He learns that she's Charlotte's younger sister by 10 years, and the real successor of the Evans family. Then, Charlotte comes out as well, wanting to introduce her sister to them. However, she notices the location they are headed for and gets excited to find out it's Alan's old academy. She wonders what else is there on the island with the academy, but is shocked to learn that the entire island is the academy. Once they reach their destination, the group gets off, learning that Natalia is somewhere on the island. However, Eruca tells a surprised Alan that he'll receive more information on her after heading home. This makes Charlotte realize that she'll meet his parents, while Alan doesn't seem too happy. It turns out, he had a massive fight with his stepfather for some reason, which is still the talk of the town in the area. Alan gets upset and claims that he still has a good relationship with his uncle, saying he still exchanges letters with him. However, Charlotte seems jealous that Alan has such a close family that he can even fight with. Thus, he encourages her to build a closer bond with her own sister so she can have family fights in the future as well. Suddenly, the group gets distracted by a nearby fight. A handsome man walks in on the fight and calms everyone down before he comes up to Alan and greets him. Charlotte is stunned upon learning he is Harvey Crawford, Alan, and Erica's father, after they head over to Harvey's house. He starts beaming with joy seeing Alan with such a cute girlfriend. Alan tries to explain, but Eruca nudges him to keep quiet. Thus, Charlotte and Alan pretend to be a couple, while Alan wonders why Eruca told his parents he was in a relationship. Harvey then brings up marriage, saying he'll do his best to help his son, and brings up an old offer he made to him. Alan angrily denies his offer, and a confused Gausetsu learns that Harvey had wanted to make Alan the headmaster of the academy, but he had refused because he didn't want the responsibility. Before Alan can expose Harvey for his seemingly pure intentions, a young girl comes into the room. Charlotte wonders if she's Erica's sister, but gets impressed upon learning it's actually her mother, Lyslot. Before Lyslot can get too comfortable with Charlotte, though, Alan changes the topic and asks about what happened to Natalia. He learns that she had fled her house a while back and enrolled in the academy with a fake identity. Alan wonders if his parents only wanted him here for Natalia's sake, but they reveal that a problem with factions has been getting worse within the academy. It turns out that the spoiled Natalia is actually a huge troublemaker and has been bullying the school factions into obeying her. Harvey requests Alan, a fellow troublemaker, to go and care for this strange girl. Meanwhile, Charlotte starts panicking that her sweet younger sister is now a hoodlum. However, they also find out that she still treats her lackeys with kindness, which gives Charlotte hope. However, she still seems upset, feeling like her disappearance might have made her sister go evil. Alan cannot deny this but tells her there are other reasons as well. Then, he decides to handle Natalia, knowing exactly how to deal with kids like her. Harvey gets excited and even tries to sneak in his offer again, which Alan immediately denies. He then tells Charlotte she can meet her sister, but should use a fake identity for now to learn more about her. After requesting his father to make a fake ID for Charlotte, Alan prepares to leave, but Lyslot reminds him it's getting late. She tries dragging him away to make him sleep. but Alan claims it would make Charlotte uncomfortable. However, since she remains silent, Lyslot calls him out for assuming things and takes him to his room. Alan then finds out the reason behind Lyslot's persistence, wanting him to share a bed with Charlotte. He tries to weasel his way out of it, but Lyslot threatens him for lying about his relationship with her. Thus, Alan is forced to accept and once again lies with Charlotte. After Lyslot shuts the door, Alan turns around and sees a blushing Charlotte inviting him to sleep. After getting into bed, Alan apologizes to Charlotte for dragging her into this mess by lying. She doesn't mind though and instead feels happy that they're sleeping together again after the resort incident. To calm himself down, Alan tries to use a spell to sleep but discovers that an enchantment in the room is sealing all his magic. He finally gets enraged, realizing his sister played a trick on him. Charlotte then smiles and discusses his family. She feels happy that they're so close and thinks that Harvey and Lyslot are an ideal couple. This makes Alan think about what life as a couple with Charlotte would be like, but then realizes what he was implying and stops. Then, Charlotte recalls what he was about to confess during Dorothea's movie shooting and asks what he wanted to say. Alan feels like confessing his feelings but doesn't know if Charlotte will just accept them out of kindness or if she truly likes him back. Meanwhile, Charlotte, who actually likes Alan, wonders if she's a girl worthy of him. After the two of them suppress their feelings, they quietly lie down to try to sleep. In the other room, Iruka gets mad that they're not doing anything special and gets up to chew them out. However, a creepy Lyslot pokes her head in and warns her to stay quiet. The next morning, Alan wakes up with bags large enough to carry groceries under his eyes. He disguises Charlotte with a spell before they head out to meet Natalia. Once at the school, kids around them immediately recognize the great demon lord and start discussing his prime achievement. However, when they finally meet Natalia as instructors, the girl seems less than interested and leaves. However, Charlotte still feels happy that she got to see her sister after all this time and starts crying out of happiness, leaving everyone else confused. The next day, Charlotte and Alan sit together with Natalia during class. They find out that she's a genius at magic, and Alan asks Natalia if she'd help Charlotte learn it as well. She tries refusing, but upon noticing how excited the girl is to learn from her, quietly accepts. Later, Natalia asks why Charlotte wants to learn magic, and the girl reveals that she just wants to be strong enough to protect herself. This reason seems understandable to Natalia, who begins teaching her before they can start studying. Though, Gaosetsu and Lu appear with lunch from the house. Everyone watching the scene gets shocked as Charlotte gets along with two legendary beasts. Afterward, as they sit to have lunch, Natalia wonders why Charlotte needs more protection despite having such powerful beasts at her side. However, Charlotte wants to be more independent. She then notices Natalia eating an unhealthy meal and leaves to get some salad for her. Natalia wonders why Charlotte cares so much about her, and Alan explains that it's because she has a little sister the same age as her. Then, she asks if Alan is someone sent by the Evans family to investigate her. When he flatly denies it, she feels relieved. But Alan then asks about her big sister, Charlotte. This topic seems to upset her, but before she can do anything, Natalia is approached by a boy named Chris. Chris challenges Natalia to a duel, wanting to prove his strength against the strongest in school. However, she doesn't seem too interested. As they are arguing, Charlotte returns with her food, but one of Chris's lackeys kicks her down. This enrages Natalia, who prepares to unleash hell. However, Alan calms her down, saying she shouldn't start a scene in the cafeteria. Natalia is surprised that he's not even trying to help his own assistant, but Alan reassures her that he won't be letting the guys get away with it that easily. With a snap of his fingers, he teleports everyone into a separate dimension, where he proceeds to give Natalia a lesson on how to handle bullies. After binding all of the bullies with a spell, he prepares to shatter all of their spirits. However, before he can give the kids PTSD, Charlotte breaks his spell and prevents the fight. She later gives both Natalia and Alan a lecture on being violent, which makes Alan happy since she's so confident now. He then realizes that Natalia was probably just helping some delinquent kids, who turned into an army and the big mess that they're seeing today. Natalia then tells him that she is just tired of Chris and his bullies, and wants to become so strong that they give up. She hopes that Alan won't request her to get along with him, and the Demon Lord nods, saying he'll help her completely crush the kids. The next day, Iruka visits Natalia at the academy. Upon finding out that her brother is teaching her how to be the best at everything to crush her competition, she sighs. Alan then proposes a challenge that will help Natalia end Chris's confidence once and for all. However, she is too powerful, as she wins the challenge by a whole 30-minute margin. After Chris leaves after his crushing defeat, Natalia's lackeys come up to her. They happily report how they've brutally taken care of people who used to bully them, and their boss compliments them. However, it turns out that it's all thanks to a strict Gaosetsu's training, who keeps them on a strict training program. Alan gets offended that Natalia calls Gaosetsu sensei, but is still only using his name, but Natalia avoids the topic. Then, Charlotte notices she's hungry and takes her to the cafeteria. There, poor Natalia realizes she made a huge mistake by going with her since Charlotte only picked healthy veggies for her health. Seeing how sincere the sweet girl is, Natalia forces herself to eat the disgusting lunch. However, she has to suffer even more once Charlotte pulls out another bowl of seconds. Watching the two of them eat, Iruka asks Alan if he's talked to Natalia about her elder sister. He reveals that she's very sensitive about the topic. Before asking if she has completed her investigation into the Evans family, Iruka nods, saying that she'll soon help him settle that matter. Meanwhile, Charlotte and Natalia seem to be getting along even better. Later, after dropping off Natalia to her room, Alan notices a strange bag sealed with magic there. Apparently, it's something very special to her. While he's looking at the bag, Chris suddenly pops his head into Natalia's room but leaves without saying anything. Afterward, Charlotte watches the sleeping Natalia, wondering if she should just keep her identity secret since Natalia doesn't seem too interested in her old family. However, both Alan and Gaosetsu reassure her that the girl is just young and needs more time before making that move. The next morning, Charlotte heads out for her training with Natalia again. After a good round of training, Natalia seems to be in a good mood and offers to take Charlotte to see something important. When they reach her room, Natalia is devastated to notice her bag is gone. Nearby, she sees a challenge letter from Chris, who cockily taunts her about her bag. Unfortunately, Chris seems to have invited her into a forbidden, dangerous dungeon, but Natalia has to recover that bag no matter what. She tells Charlotte to keep this a secret from Alan before leaving. Alan later learns about Natalia's disappearance and realizes that she's in danger since the dungeon's boss is in her egg-laying season. Meanwhile, back in the dungeon, Chris meets Natalia and tosses her back into its depths, challenging her to be the first to take it back. Back at the academy, Alan feels stupid for not realizing how far the dumb genius Chris is willing to go. He heads out to enter the dungeon after telling everyone else he can handle it. Back to the dungeon, Natalia manages to get her bag, but suddenly she and Chris encounter a massive chimera. The terrifying monster knocks Natalia down and prepares to attack her. Chris seems too terrified to actually help her, but suddenly, a spell from someone distracts the monster, which finally leaves. It turns out to be Natalia's elder sister, Charlotte, who is using her knowledge from all the lessons she took. Natalia sighs in relief, before getting upset that Charlotte followed her. She then tells her that it was a huge risk to attack that chimera and she was lucky that it decided to run away. However, Charlotte remains confident that she made the right choice to follow and protect her. Then, Natalia tells her that her bag is actually so important that she needs to retrieve it on her own. As Charlotte listens to her story, outside the dungeon, we see Alan rushing in, knowing that the real dungeon boss, Salamander, can come out at any time. Inside, Natalia finally begins telling Charlotte about her own big sister. Charlotte brings up the fact that her sister is a wanted criminal, which immediately annoys Natalia. She defends her sister loyally, saying that she has always been a sweet girl. Unfortunately, Natalia was too young to protect her from her evil family and felt horrible when she ran away. After her family had gotten rid of Charlotte's belongings, Natalia had nothing to remember her sister by except a magic bag. Apparently, the bag has a spell that tells her that her sister is still alive. Unfortunately, whenever Natalia tries to use the spell on it to detect Charlotte's location, another spell cancels it out. Natalia feels like some creep has captured her sister and is forcing her spell to cancel out. Charlotte knows that it's actually Alan trying to protect her from unknown magic, and gulps nervously, realizing Natalia probably won't like him. Then, Natalia gets up and tells Charlotte that she really reminds her of her big sister, despite only being with her for a few weeks. Meanwhile, Chris, who is now awake, apologizes to Natalia for everything he has done, having been brought to tears by her sad story. Unfortunately, their magical moment gets ruined when the sounds of footsteps echo in the cave. The group gets terrified to see a massive beast, far more powerful than the chimera, step out. Salamander roars, while Charlotte gets ready to protect the kids. They run away, but Charlotte's spells don't seem to work against this monster. She gets knocked out and loses her disguise, which shocks Natalia. Suddenly, an even stronger spell repels Salamander, and a demonic Alan steps out. As he confronts Salamander, the entire island seems to be shaking, and inside his house, Harvey hopes that Alan at least leaves the building standing. Back in the dungeon, it seems like a huge fight is about to begin. Suddenly, all the tension gets released when Salamander starts cuddling Alan like a puppy. Lyslok comes in and explains that Alan had taken care of the beast all the way back when she was a baby. Alan rescues Charlotte, and the kids finally escape the forbidden dungeon, safe and sound. Outside, Chris apologizes for causing this whole fiasco, and Natalia seems excited to meet her big sister again. Charlotte wakes up and realizes her disguise is gone. and apologizes to Natalia for deceiving her. However, the girl doesn't seem to care and instead brings out a book she used to love in her childhood. Natalia requests her big sister to read it out to her one more time, and the two sisters reunite in a happy ending. Afterward, Natalia thanks Alan for saving her sister and taking care of her all this time. Charlotte blushes shyly, feeling grateful for everything to Alan. However, when Gaosetsu mentions that he's her dear boyfriend, Natalia gets ticked off. She starts chasing Alan around with bloodlust, thinking that he tricked her sister with bad intentions. Meanwhile, Alan's parents watch the scene, having found out that they truly aren't a couple. Yet, Iruka apologizes for lying to them, but they don't seem too unhappy. Besides, it seems obvious to everyone how much the two actually love each other. Later, after finishing the business with Natalia, Alan heads home and begins his routine life with Charlotte again. As they sit together, Alan wonders why she asked him about his feelings so many times. But before the two of them can bring that up again, Mayacha suddenly interrupts. She gives Alan an unknown package, and he carefully opens it. It seems to be a summoning spell, but instead of an evil monster, Natalia comes out of the spell instead. She claims she only wants to make sure her sister isn't being taken advantage of and challenges an angry Alan to a fight. At this moment, Dorothea also somehow comes back, looking for Alan. She thanks him for helping her write her new hit novel and gives him a gift. However, Alan wonders what else she needs from him and finds out that her editor now wants her to write a sequel. Thus, Alan gets trapped into another awkward film shooting, while the rest of the girls prepare to stay at his house. After Gaosetsu makes a hearty meal for everyone, they all go to sleep. In her sleep, Charlotte experiences a nightmare about her memories. Having been locked into a cold, dark room, the poor girl huddled up in a corner. However, this time, a Prince Charming truly is there to help her out, and Alan frees her from the darkness. She gets up from her room after waking up and heads downstairs to see Alan awake. Both of them head outside and sit together to have a peaceful moment. As the two of them enjoy stargazing while drinking hot chocolate, Alan accidentally puts his hand on Charlotte's. He tries to remove it, but she holds it there with a smile on her face. The two of them then happily hold hands while they enjoy the even lovelier moment together. Charlotte then thanks Alan for everything he has done for her and tells him she is truly glad to have met him. The scene seems to be getting steamy, and the two of them, having never been so close together, start leaning in for a kiss. Unfortunately, Alan notices just in time that all the other girls are spying on them and immediately calls them out. The party poopers get out, having gotten exposed by their impatience. Natalia gets mad at Alan for being with her sister, but this time, he is prepared for a fight to the finish for his lover. Meanwhile, the scene then shifts to the Nere's kingdom, where the crown prince has finally tracked his ex-fiancée and Alan's location. The prince smirks, preparing to make a move on this new challenger, and this exciting cliffhanger is where this season ends. Thanks for watching the video. Make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed it and subscribe to our channel for similar content.